And we are officially live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Millionaire Mentors Mastermind. This is the first Millionaire Mentors call. And this is, it was only fitting to have the guy that I kicked off the Millionaire Mindcast podcast with, as well as the Millionaire Mentors Mastermind. This is Mr. David Osborn, who has been one of my greatest mentors in a lot of different areas of my life. And, there's so much gratitude I want to pay this dude, but I'm most excited to be able to share his wisdom with so many of you. And the whole reason why I brought David on is not just from his wealth accumulation standpoint, but this guy is living like a millionaire in all areas of his life. He's the founder of GoBundance, which is a millionaire mastermind group that is focused on living like a millionaire in all the life categories and pillars that we have, identified as being important. But he knows a little bit about building some wealth too. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So depending on where you guys are tuning in from, it sounds like we got a handful of people already on the call saying, what's up? Let us know where you are tuning in from, what city, what state, what industry you're in. So I can kind of get a little bit of an idea of, who we're serving, and we can craft the conversation there. But know that you have the opportunity to ask David questions, which this guy gets paid a lot of money to stand on stages, and his time is very valuable. So Dro, what's up, brother? It's good to see you.
Matty, it's so good to be with you, man. I'm proud of you and all the success you've had. I love your backdrop right there. 6-figure flipper, Millionaire Mindcast, man, you got it going on. It's great to witness your success and be part of your community.
Well, to be honest, dude, I'd probably be there'd probably be 20 other logos up here if it wasn't for you kicking my ass and telling me to focus on one thing. And that's the power of having great mentors and people that keep it real with you, that are honest and want your success, but also kick you in the ass. And
I was on the call today with an amazingly talented lady from Victoria, and she'd bought me at a coaching for charity deal. And so I spent 45 minutes on the phone with her, and I was like, you're an amazing woman, but you're trying to do 18 things that are all significant, and you're not going to get them done. She's trying to write 2 books in 1 year. I'm like, I took 7 years to write 1 book, and I'm pretty accountability based, and she's trying to make 5 businesses and be a professor and all these things. And it's the same thing. I mean, really, you're better off picking 1, 2, or 3 things and just nailing it. And then once you've achieved that level of intensity and success, and really 1 area is where you should start, but 2 is okay if they kind of dovetail together, like Millionaire Mindcast and 6-figure flipper. And then, let that grow from there. And so hopefully when we next talk, my one assignment to her, she sent in 80 goals. I have that goal sheet, Maddie. Yeah. She felt she had to fill the whole thing in. I said, look, I didn't do a good job of coaching you. Come up with 20 items, 16 in your personal life in the 8 gardens. That's 2 each. And then 4 business goals. Let's keep it that simple. And one of her goals is a co-author book, how she, as an immigrant woman and another friend, lived in refugee camps and overcame so many obstacles. I said, that's the book you should be working on. Get that one done. Don't worry about the other one. Give yourself 24 months to get 1 really good book out, and then focus on 1 aspect of your business, and you can blow life up. But when you try to do 18 things at the same time, you just make not enough progress in all 18 to make a difference in your own life or the lives of others.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a plague, and it's a learning lesson that every new entrepreneur goes through, is one, the excitement of just kind of being in control of your own fate, and then seeing all the different avenues and channels that you might be able to create wealth in, or, to make an impact in, and yet narrowing it down. I remember we were hiking in Vietnam. We were going into the 3rd largest cave. You actually posted a picture on it the other day, and it was a day in hike.
Geez, that was a great trip.
It's such an epic trip. Mm-hmm. And we got into the cave that night, and we ended up doing our 1 sheets, which is kind of our scorecard of life, where it's got all your, your income, expenses, taxes, what's left over to invest, your life happiness index, your top 2 goals in each category, health. I mean, pretty much your baseball card of life, right? With all your stats and important things. And then you get to present this to the group and have, millions of dollars worth of consulting within 15, 30 minutes. And it's super impactful. And that's often where we get some of the harshest feedback. And yet it's usually ends up being the feedback that serves us the greatest moving forward. And I remember you said, Maddie, you're being a deadbeat. And I was like, hold on, dude, what do you mean by that? And you said, the the fun of conceiving ideas and like conceiving babies, it's a whole hell of a lot of fun. But then when it comes to raising those ideas, those businesses, those, new things that you're going to implement, that's the challenge, right? And that's where oftentimes we create it, conceive it, and then we just neglect it. And
Right.
and so I remember you sharing that with me, and that was something that I always have taken forward with me. I'm curious, what are some of the greatest life lessons from some of your mentors that you constantly reflect back on, even still doing what you're doing at the level you're doing it today, that still serves you time and time again?
And I'm glad you remember that conversation positively. Sometimes when I think we've been camping for several days, and the tireder I get, the more blunt I can get. And I sometimes think, man, I'm just too mean and too aggressive sometimes. So I'm glad you had the resilience to take that message well. I've learned so many lessons, and as you're talking about focus, I started off my, my most recent set of career, I guess, as a real estate agent. And I remember real estate agent training is so abundant that they'll teach you so many things. So I was going to this Howard Brinton seminar back then. He's since passed away, but much beloved in real estate. And you'd come back with 300 ideas. And I remember one of my mentors at the time, who was the manager of my office, and he said, I said, what do I do? I've got all these ideas. He said, just put in one a quarter. That's it. Just do one thing every quarter to improve the strength of your business. So of course I tried to do two to be an overachiever, but you take 300, you're never going to get them all in. But if you took two a quarter, like a letter to your clients thanking them when they listed, or a prospecting letter to a new farm, and then you automated that, and then you slowly built the strength of the business. And after learning that, 3 years later, we were the number one team in the company. Um, and today there's 170,000 agents in the company. There weren't then, but you like the way I did that. So
Yeah, that was nice.
there was a few thousand back then. And then, so that's one, is like prioritization. Like you said, raise your babies, just don't conceive of your babies. Actually pick the one you like the most and drive it forward in your life for a long period of time, because that's going to be your rainmaker, your money maker. My second lesson was, I had kind of a breakdown when I was in my early 30s. I was just trying to do too much, and I wasn't getting the right things done at the right time. And I guess we always have this, tendency as entrepreneurs to try to do too much all over the place at all the time. And I actually got shingles from stress, which is weird. My doctor said, people don't get this till they're 50, and you're like 31 and you have shingles from stress. But my problem was I wasn't prioritizing. And I remember I had a coach at the time, a mentor, and that mentor said, listen, just write down the 7 most important things you have to do each day, and then do the top 3. So again, it's a similar lesson to the one before, but this is on a daily basis. Like I would clean my kitchen, take out the trash, make my prospecting calls. I literally kind of did everything in the order I wrote it down. I had no prioritization, and I was working 16, 17 hours a day, and I was just running out of juice. Like that's why I got the shingles. Like I couldn't get more done. And so really the pain, like the breakdown physically that I had, and it took me, a few weeks to get over that, probably maybe even a couple months. But when I came out on the other side, one of my partners said, like, you went into the booth like Clark Kent, you came out like Superman. But the only difference in my way of approaching it is really because I had this physical pain from the shingles that I never wanted to experience again. It was like a burning rash across my chest. I came out of it only doing the important stuff. So I went from a guy trying to do everything equally to literally blowing off anything. Back then I would prioritize A, B, and C, and I would just do the A's. So shortly after then, Maddie, my electricity got shut off. I remember I was sitting in my house one day and I'm like, what happened? And I realized I hadn't paid my electricity bill. And I remember another thing, I came home one day and my kitchen just stunk to high heaven because I hadn't cleaned the kitchen. But what I was doing was I was recruiting talent to my business. That was my goal number one. And so I was literally having 15 recruiting appointments across the city of Dallas-Fort Worth a week, which took a lot of time, driving all over the place. And I was late all the time, but I just neglected all that B and C stuff. And that changed my life. My results got better. I had more fun. The shingles was caused from not having fun. Once I got rid of the stress, I started enjoying myself more. And then I had to learn to delegate. And that was the next phase of that, and probably equally an important lesson. In fact, when I was talking to that lady earlier, I said, if you don't have an assistant, you are one. We've all heard the saying, but it's so true. And she's like, well, I can't afford one right now. I said, well, is your goal to be a mogul? Like, are you going to be a massively successful woman? She said, yes. I said, well, how many massively successful people in life, women or male, don't have personal assistants that they have an incredible harmony with? In fact, an entire team to run so many aspects of their lives. And she's like, okay, so you really think I should find one? Then she said, of course, the last two I hired were terrible. And I'm like, then you need to learn how to hire. But coming all the way back to delegation, so then I had to hire a bookkeeper to pay my bills. I hired a house cleaner to come clean my house. And you'd think this is a lot of money, but it's really not. You can get somebody to clean your house for $50 once a week if you live in an apartment like I was back then. Bookkeeper, in the beginning was like $70 a week to come pay my bills. Add that together, it's $120 a week. That's like $500 a month. Who can't afford that? Like, that's the beginning of your team. And today I've taken that so far forward that now I try to only do the A priority stuff. Now an A priority might be calling a half a billionaire family to explore investing in my private equity fund, or giving back and contributing. Like, I just joined help the homeless in Austin have nobody living on the streets. I just committed to raise $1 million over 10 years as part of a $60 million campaign. So I get to do the really big stuff now. And then all around me are an army of people that just help me by taking care of stuff that I don't want to take care of. And also they get paid to do it. So it's like exactly what a society is supposed to be built around.
Love that. So I was thinking in line, we already got some questions rolling in, and I was thinking to stay in line with the GoBundance pillars, which is financial freedom. It's great to make a lot of money, but that leads into the second pillar, which is genuine contribution. It's great to make a lot of money. It sure as hell feels a whole lot better to give it away and give it back and make an impact. We talk about extreme accountability and goal setting. We talk about authentic relationships, being a better husband or better wife, better, business owner, better community member, father, mother, whatever you want to, call it, being just a better human being. And then having obviously age-defying health. None of it matters if we're not alive and able to show up at a high level. And then obviously the last one is lifestyle, bucket list adventures, having fun. So I know we got some questions that people are starting to throw in some of these areas. So feel free to throw those in, and I'll pepper those in as they seem appropriate. But to start off with, a lot of people are going, first question that came in from Jake Wells was, how long did it take you to get to that $1 million milestone? And how rapidly did you feel that momentum build afterwards to leading you to the 5, to the 10, to the 15, all the way to the 100?
Yeah. So it's success is falling forward, right? It's super sloppy. I know that I got a little lucky in that I was in real estate sales at a fast growing residential real estate company. And by the way, when I talked to Richard Branson, he said, people always say I got lucky because I started an airline right when the music business was going away. And Bill Gates says I got lucky because I started in, computers when computers were just taking off. But what Richard Branson said was you have to put yourself in a position to be lucky. So let me tell you how I got lucky. I sold real estate for 3 years. And then I decided I didn't like to sell real estate. I drove down the same street for the third time on the same day, saying the same thing to the third set of clients. I was like, wow, I could be a tape recorder. That's an exciting job. So I went ahead and started opening franchises. The company was expanding and they needed people to open franchises. So I went up and opened franchises. Now, nothing wrong with being a real estate agent for your entire life. My mom's one. She loves it. She still loves it. She loved it all the way until she retired a couple years ago at 80 something. But I didn't. So I went and started opening franchises. Now, back then, Keller Williams is now a powerhouse, but back then it wasn't. Like, nobody was making money at Keller Williams. Nobody owned, successful franchises except Gary Keller and the founders and a couple other people. So it wasn't like obvious then that it was going to be massively successful. But for me, I was like, I got to build a business. I'm ambitiously lazy, Maddie. So I'll work really, really hard to create something that pays me for life, which is why I love flipping. I love people that build a rental portfolio. Anything you can put energy in that then becomes a business that operates for a long period of time and pays you money. To me, that makes a lot of sense as an ambitiously lazy person. I'm still waiting for the lazy part to kick in, but I'm sure someday I'll be lazy. But I really want to put my energy into things that'll pay me for a lifetime. And so I started opening franchises. I probably made 6 figures for the first time when I was about 30, and I was probably a millionaire 5 years later. But what I learned from that was I planted all these seeds. I kept opening these franchises, and then as they grew, my wealth grew with it. And one thing I've learned about life is to build great wealth, you have to build either an operating business or a bunch of real estate. You have to build something so that, like, if you're just getting better at your craft, you get a raise, you get paid more. That's great. That's vertical income. That's one way. But if you have 5 homes that you own and the market happens to jump 10%, you just got 10% multiplied by 5. And probably because you have leverage, it's even greater than 10%.
Right.
So you need to have these assets or something you're building that can rise with a rising tide. The tide goes up, the tide goes down, but it won't affect you at all if you don't have anything on the river, you know? So you need to have a lot of boats out there so that the tide goes up and lifts you with it. So it was sloppy success. I mean, you never look back and celebrate, right? You're always just in the grid of battle. And so you tend to like, it would go up and I'd make a little more money. And then I had quite a few years where I was making like $1 million a year. But it never felt like that. I didn't feel like I was winning. I just felt like I was taking all my money and opening other franchises, which I was. So I take every dollar I earned and it would go back into another business. And the funny thing about the tax code back then, they've just changed it, was you could spend 200,000 launching a business and you didn't get any of it off your taxes. So I'd literally be paying taxes. It would show on paper that I made $1 million. I'd have to pay 300,000 in taxes and I'd have minus 200,000 in cash flow because I was taking 200 times 4 and opening 4 new franchises. I'd park 800,000 into the new franchises. It was just so interesting. I was just getting this crash course in business, but because I was in a company that was a good company and because I was aggressive and expanding and planting trees, that income kept going up quite a long time. And really I had a pretty good run from like 94 all the way up till 2007. So I had the luck of getting into a real estate space right before a 13-year bull market. Now, I didn't know it was going to go up for 13 years, but it did. I don't want to imply to anyone it was easy. It was brutal, man. I had shingles. I had a breakdown. I had to break through. I had to learn how to hire and lead people who were often much older than me. I had to learn how to read leases. I had to learn how to buy phone systems. And hire great people. And I had plenty of failure, but ultimately the trend was pretty good. And then you had the crash, right? So the crash shows up in 2008 and my income goes down by half, but all my expenses stayed the same. So by the time the crash came, I was spending 700,000 a month on my businesses and my income crashed by 50%. Right. So I think by then I was making 3.5 million a year. So people shouldn't feel sorry for me, but I felt sorry for myself because I was scared. I was like, I got all these salaries, all this overhead, and the income's coming down. So we fought to stabilize. We tried to not let too many people go. We did have to let a few people go. We had to cut rent. We had to sort of stop paying rent on some buildings where I'd negotiated no personal guarantee. I was very good on the way up at not negotiating personal guarantees or getting rid of them. So when the landlord said, "Hey, you got to pay your rent," I said, "No, I don't. You could close the doors and lock me out. You'd be doing me a favor. That business is losing 20,000 a month. So by not paying you rent, I'm only losing 12. Do me a favor, lock the doors." And the guy didn't lock the doors. And so to this day, we're still in business with him and we managed to recover. Now we're paying him full rent, I think, again. And we've got this unresolved giant debt that I owe him. But I'm like, well, the company owes you that. I don't personally owe you that. The company owes you 200. The company's probably, making about 100 right now. And we're happy to keep paying you, but we're not really happy to pay the back debt. So we're in constant negotiation with this, and it's just been sitting there for years. But I think overall he won because we didn't go out of business. At one point, his shopping center was 50% vacant, and we were 20% that remained. And we always paid him a little bit, even if it was only 1/8 of what we owed him. So my point is that crash occurred. And then around 2009 or 10, I looked around me and I said, wow, real estate. So then I lost wealth and I lost income and I went down by half, but I was still making about $1 million a year again, or $1.5 million. And then I had built up a certain amount of cash. And around 2009, I started looking around going, wow, real estate's taking a beating. It's got to be a good time to buy. And then I stubbed my toe in the water around late 2009, early 2010. And then around 2011, I was like, man, this is like that one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. I need to go all in. And I put all my chips in and borrowed as much money and used investor money. And my gosh, I wished I'd known then what I know now, because I could have turned 200 million into 600 million if I'd known. Now I have the connections and the relationships to do that. But back then I had 4 or 5 million personally. So I turned it into 20. Those assets, then the market, as everyone knows, shot back up, which I didn't expect that either. I thought it would stay down for a long time. But when the market shot back up, it brought all my old real estate assets up and all my new real estate assets up. And that trend has continued for a long time. So I got lucky. I had a really good run. I was aggressive. There was a lot of brutal, painful lessons in that run. And no one should compare themselves to me because not everyone gets that lucky. It's like if you happen to be at, Microsoft in the 80s, or IBM, the guy at Microsoft became worth 10 million bucks and the guy at IBM didn't. There's a lot of luck in life. But the real lesson of this is you'll never win if you don't put yourself in a position to get lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think about, some of the conversations we've had, and I remember, I think we were about to hike Machu Picchu, and you said some quote, and it kind of reminded me of something I read the other day, and which really applies to what you just talked about, which was kind of this level of uncertainty where like you just kept going and knowing that, if you did the right things consistently over an extended period of time, eventually it was going to lead you in the direction of success, and the landscape was going to open. And I was, the quote was, the quality of your life is based on the level of uncertainty you can handle. Uncertainty makes you alive. Successful people are addicted to that uncertainty. Is that something that you use to kind of fuel you and continue to, or what is it that kind of gets you fired up to keep going after what you're going after every single day?
So I think some of it actually, Maddie, comes from a need for survival. And, I always teach people I can teach you exactly how to win because I didn't use any super clever formulas to win. I just pushed myself constantly not in spite of just pain, but in spite of massive insecurity, massive self doubt. So it's important that people realize like today, I barely remember that because I've gone so far. But when I'm talking to a 25-year-old or something like that, the general idea is, you know, the general idea is I forgot sometimes how insecure, nervous, neurotic, terrified I was at that age.
Yeah.
So you push through all that. The one thing that kept me going is I always kept a fire burning inside of me for me to help to win. Like I just wanted to win. And I wanted to find a way to a better life and a better world for me and for the people around me. And that burning desire has kept me on a pathway that's led me to success after success. And then I found like when I try to slow it down, I just get bored of myself. Like I want to keep driving. I want to keep building. I'm not sure that's the best thing ever. Like I think some of it comes from a fear. Like I didn't grow up in the easiest environment. My dad was a Green Beret colonel. He was very tough on us. We moved a lot, like 10 times by the time I was 13. And I didn't want to go back to that environment where I was kind of slightly afraid. I didn't want anyone to ever have control over me again. So ultimately, yeah, I think the drive comes for different people. So when I can tell you how to win, what I don't ever know is what your drive is. And I know, Maddie, you came from a tough circumstance, and I know that people that seem to riddle it out and figure it out from a tough circumstance tend to do really, really well. But then another one of my mentors has said that success is an addiction, just like narcotics, and that
Mm.
basically it may just be that I'm addicted to success. But I know this: I'm constantly trying to push my life up and forward and doing more and meeting better people and building a better peer group around myself and finding more charitable causes to give back to. I mean, my new driving goal is to now give away 100 million because I've made about that. So I'm like, could I give away 100 and get to 500? I don't know, but I'm taking on more and more causes to give back. And try to be the best dad I can. So a lot of that, I think it becomes like a virtuous cycle as well. Like I've noticed the more success I have, the more success I crave, and I want to do more and impact more and make a difference more. So I know how to tell you to be successful. I just don't know what your drive is and what you're trying to get away from.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And we got some questions coming in. Guys, if you guys are enjoying this interview with David, give some thumbs up, some hearts, whatever you see on the screen here. And be sure to post your questions in here. We got a couple from Steve and David, Daniel that I want to ask. But real quick, I want to sprinkle in this question. What do you say to the person, when you're constantly looking to level up? What do you say to the people that feel like you are thinking that you're better than them, or because you're striving for more and that maybe they're not, there becomes this emotional gap between those relationships? How did you handle that?
One thing you have to deal with is a lot of controversy and a lot of people throwing stuff at you and judgment of you. And when I was younger, it used to bug me a lot. And now that I'm older, it still bugs me a little bit. I'm over it a lot. I mean, there's not a single person that rises to a high level of place in life that I know of that doesn't have controversy surrounding them. People are going to call you names. They're going to call you lucky. They're going to call you greedy. They're going to call you arrogant. All of this occurs. There's no way you're successful without learning how to act confident. You may not always be confident. You have to learn how to act confident.
Mm.
Early on, it was a lot of fake for me. Like I learned how to fake confidence at a high level. And keep in mind, I didn't have sports to fall back on. I was a JV player. I was talking to a guy at lunch today who was asking my advice, and he's like, "Oh, my son was on JV for a year, but now he's finally on varsity." I'm like, "I don't think they ever put me on varsity." So I didn't have that to fall back on, but I went back to that fire I kept burning inside that I wanted to win and I wanted to make a difference in life. And then I learned how to fake confidence, which is look people in the eye, give them a firm handshake, have a few good points. One of my favorite sayings back then and still is sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut and make people think you're stupid than to open your mouth and prove it. So when I was selling and I didn't really know how, I would just ask questions and then listen to the answers.
Mm.
Um, if you ask questions, you look intelligent. You sound like you're interested. You look in charge. As far as the arrogance thing, I'm sure I get that a lot. I try really hard not to be, but I'm now massively confident. I'm massively purposeful. I know what I'm doing and where I'm going most of the time. Unlike me 20 years ago when I was still trying to figure it all out. And so sometimes that strikes people as arrogant. Sometimes, like, I'm not that social either, so I'm not eager to really go to a party and mix with 30 people for 3 hours. I'll go for an hour and I'll mix with 10 of the 30, and then I'm just going to slip out the door and you won't see me again. And sometimes people take that the wrong way, and I'm sorry, but I don't care that much. I mean, I can't care that much. What I'm trying to do is help this guy that wants to eliminate homelessness in Austin. I'm trying to help a guy who wants to eliminate bring clean water to the 700 million people that don't have it. And I'm trying to make a difference in my life. And, the part of that is, sometimes offending people and sometimes looking. And the thing I think too is I think I talk money a little bit too much sometimes. And so certainly, Maddie, I'll go home from an event and be like, man, I should have been nicer at that one moment. And I'm like, but I wasn't. And I also know what comes from me is this assertiveness and aggression is actually what gets shit done. So the reason I'm able to commit to raising $1 million for, the homeless in Austin and be part of the 60 guys that are going to try to empty the streets of homeless people in Austin is because I have this take no prisoners, get stuff done kind of an attitude. And sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. And so you try to balance all that out with compassion and everything else. But, I am what I am. You got to take it or leave it.
Well, that's why I love hanging around you, Joe, is because your standards in life, not just in wealth building and your business, but your standards for being a good husband, your standards for being a good father, your standards for, giving back to people is at such a high level. And you give everybody in your world the opportunity to sit co-pilot there with you. And if they choose to not, select into that, that's up to them. But you've always had an open door. And sometimes that standard may or may not align with somebody, but that's why I think you continue to have the impact that you have, whether it rubs people the wrong way or not. They can walk away going, that guy challenged me, or that you got them thinking differently. And those are the people that, I'm grateful to be surrounded with and to have in my life. And to touch on that topic real quick in regards to giving, because you talked a little bit about this in Steamboat, and it's the most I've heard you kind of talk and open up about it, which you've done in private settings before. But I thought it was really cool on some of the stuff that you want to make 500 million now, because you want to give away 100 million bucks. Right. And, I want to reframe that topic a little bit for some people, because I think people get disenfranchised with, oh, he just wants to make more money. And really the underlying motivation and thread and a lot of why you're doing what you're doing is, to create more opportunity for all the people in your companies and a bigger lifestyle, and to, not have the stresses of somebody who's struggling to make paycheck to paycheck, but also you have a much bigger platform now to give back to Charity Water, to give back to the homelessness in Austin, to give back to you give to One Life, all the time. So tell us a little bit more about the importance of wealth building to have the impact and the passions and the causes and the charities that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, I know guys that are worth 5 million that seem to have more happiness than me. I know guys that are solid middle-class folks that have, more happiness than me. So this isn't a happiness play. It's a what fires me up and keeps me going play. So I had reached a bit of a funk last year. I've been a very goal-driven person, and I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point, for 20 plus years. And I'd always set this goal of hitting a net worth of about 100. I guess it's no secret because you put it on the flyer. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'll just live with it.
Sorry.
I put it out there enough myself. So, yeah. So that was my goal. And then I hit it. I was like, well, okay, now I was waiting for, God to touch me on the shoulder and say, go, my son, and put on a robe and give fish to the poor or something, or go, design solar power to bring free energy to people. And nothing happened. And I was like, 3 months go by, 6 months. And the CEO of my company's Matt King said, "Hey, dude, when are you going to do your next vision and your goal? You seem to, when are you going to?" He'd ask me over and over. I'm like, I don't know, man. Nothing's coming. And then one day I was doing a guided visualization with a guy, Mike McCarthy, and I just wrote down, give away 100 million. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's really inspiring. That speaks to me. And so I made 100. Could I give it away? And then I thought, well, crap. Then I wouldn't have any money. So how about I make 500? And then I thought, okay, so turn that into 25 million a year in income. That seems very challenging, very difficult, very interesting. All of the pieces. How do you give it away while earning it? Because it's easier to make money with money. Like if I was really bold, I'd just give 100 away right now and then start over and try to make 500. But that's not what I'm going to do. So I'm going to, just give away more and more a year. I give away more last year than I ever have, and more the year before, and I'll give away more this year. So keep stepping that up while figuring out how to generate more at the same time. And I do all that because it's challenging and it's inspiring and it's a game that I know how to play. And then I felt like excited again. And then I wrote my goals and my vision and I started cruising into the future with excitement again. And I was talking to this guy from Mobile Loaves and Fishes, who's this charity guy. He's an amazing man. Quit his job in '98, went and lived with the homeless, fed them first. Now has a community that he's trying to take all the homeless off the streets. And in 2001, he quit his job, went full time, mortgaged his house, got fully leveraged, and now he runs basically. I mean, it's going to be $100 million project, right? That's
Wow.
he lives with the homeless in these little homes they're building with them, so he doesn't make much money. But what he's doing is, I mean, he makes six figures, but not a lot. But what he's doing is as big as anything anybody I've ever met is doing, right? He's literally changing a piece of the world forever. And he said, no, maybe you were touched on the shoulder. He said, God needs people to make money to fund all these causes too. He said, there's a lot of people out there that want to do good, but almost every single one of them needs money. So maybe you were touched. And I thought that was really validating and encouraging. But there's no question I'm slightly manic and slightly, I don't know that you would want to pursue the things I want to pursue if you were born in complete balance. Like I said, I came from a difficult upbringing. I'm still probably running a little bit towards safety and away from what scared me as a young man. But
Yeah.
I'm just enjoy making a difference, and I'm driven hard towards making that difference. And until that changes, this is who I am, and this is what I do.
I love it, man. As we wrap up on this topic, Sonia asked, how do you choose and define what charities you give to and support, being that I'm sure you get asked all the time, to support?
Yeah. So I try to give to everyone that asks. It might only be $100, but I've kind of got a give to everyone rule. And then,
That's awesome.
but the ones I choose are the ones that really inspire me. So the charity water guy spoke, and he had me bawling my eyes out about a kid that, in some countries they spend 3 hours just getting water. And this was a kid who broke the family's clay vessel and committed suicide because she was so ashamed. And I just couldn't take the story. It broke me up inside. So I committed to that one there. A friend of mine, a high net worth individual in Austin, who's my mentor, asked me to sit on the board for Habitat for Humanity. I do a lot with houses, so I gave there. And then through that same guy, I met the charity, the Mobile Loaves and Fishes guy. So I started giving there. My friend Tim Rhodes started One Life Fully Lived, and he's super passionate about bringing the technologies we take for granted as overachievers to the inner cities and to different people. So I give there. And just 2 days ago, I actually went to a group in Austin where they do microloans, and it was started in Indonesia. You guys have probably heard of it. And I was in a room with like 30 Spanish women who had all started a business on the microloans that these guys had given out. And so
Wow.
I'm trying to see if I can remember its name, but Grameen. Have you guys heard of Grameen? Grameen. So now I'm probably going to give there. I'm like, this is so cool. I see in Austin, Texas, 30 Spanish ladies approximately, and one has a jewelry business, one's a cleaner, one has a little juice store, and they get to go to Grameen and get microloans. And if I put money into that, I actually get paid. I get paid 1 or 2%. So I should get, other than the risk of loss, but most people in that group seem to support one another and get all the money paid back. So the guy leading it's trying to raise a $50 million fund for microloans. And I think that's really cool. So for me, a lot of it's like, okay, clean water, that's got to fix that. Or a lot around entrepreneurialism. Like how could we, either help people that can't help themselves. Like some of these homeless people obviously have mental disabilities and a lot of challenges. And then also raising entrepreneurs. So fixing problems that people shouldn't have to deal with, or helping people, helping us all become more independent and self-sufficient, which is, I think, really what life's all about if you can be. So those are the two that seem to inspire me now.
So I've always been a big fan of just studying and modeling. And you've been one of those people that have really given me close proximity to some of the stuff that you do. And you always overthink that somebody does something crazy or out of this world. And yet, Steve asked, a person's net worth will never exceed their self-worth. What are some of your daily disciplines you implement further to develop yourself as a person and to challenge yourself to grow on a daily or a weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah. So definitely don't ever compare yourself to anybody else. I have a good friend and we hang out all the time. He's like, I'm so mad you're richer than me. And I'm like, dude, I got lucky. You should never compare to me. Like the exact same skill set you have, I had, I just happened to get in a company that grew 10x in 10 years. And that doesn't always happen. So that's not wise. Like I could compare myself to billionaires and feel short. But if you think of the guy that launched Priceline or the guy that launched Facebook, Zuckerberg worth $16 billion. Well, he got a little lucky. You have to admit, he caught a vibe. He worked hard. He created, so you just can't compare. The second one is I did this seminar once, right, when I was having a lot of personal troubles. And they did this really weird thing. And, it was probably run by a bunch of ex-hippies that used to do a bunch of drugs or something. But they wrapped me up in a carpet and then they made me force my way out of the carpet. So it's like being born again. That's the analogy I got. And what I realized during this whole seminar was like some of the internal talk I had in my head back then, I thought I would never talk to my child the way I talk to myself. Like, you loser, you dummy, you lazy, you didn't go to the gym today, you didn't make your calls, you're such a freaking, you get really down on myself internally. And I think many, many people are like this. And so I stuck a sticker on my book then that said no negative. It said a negative self-talk. And then it had a line through it, like no negative self-talk. And I began to try to treat myself like my own child. Like I tried to treat me like a child. So I got much nicer to myself and much kinder with myself in my early 30s, and just accepted that I was going to make mistakes, accepted that I was going to fail, accepted that I was going to continuously fall short of my goals. And that sort of liberated me. Like I don't really get into pity parties that much. I don't really feel sorry for myself for very long, because a lot of times people beat themselves up and it's really an excuse to stay small, because you spend a lot of energy feeling bad with that little voice yelling at you. And, of course I still have the voice, but I'm just much better at disposing of it, ignoring it, like moving on from it. So I think kind of treating my own self, my entire being, like talking internally to myself the way I now try to talk to my kids, which is always from kindness, compassion, and also here are these are the standards, here's the boundaries, versus why'd you do that? Why do you always do that? What's wrong with you? And of course that slips out occasionally, but internally it's the same way. I try to treat myself with that same level of respect. And that level of forgiveness and compassion for myself has actually enabled me to have greater forgiveness and compassion for other people as well.
I love that. In regards to your health, I know this is something, to do what you've done and accomplish what you've accomplished, most people go, well, how does he do it? Right. And you've always told me through systems, through talent, and through people, and obviously just working your tail off. And oftentimes, other things get put on the back burner when you're on that climb. But I know you've made health and age-defying health a very big part of your all around, whole millionaire lifestyle type mentality. Tell us a little bit about what that routine looks like. How do you take care of your body physically, mentally?
Yeah, I'm proud of the fact that I weigh about 9 pounds less now than I did in 2006. So, I mean, it's not a lot, but I only weigh 150. So it's a reasonable percentage. When I was building my businesses and doing a lot of meetings and moved up into corporate America briefly for 2 years, I was just putting on weight. I mean, every night was a new steak dinner. It was a new glass of wine. And I was now, transitioning beyond that age, 39, 40, where you could just naturally rely on your instinctive ability to stay in shape. And so I just made it a mission. I met Tim Rode, who's one of the three amigos and part of Go Abundance, and he was massively committed to health. And we just started adding, adventures to our lives, like climbing Kilimanjaro or hiking with you to Machu Picchu or doing the Downeyville Downhill, which is one of the first ones we did, which terrified me because I hadn't been on a bike for 20 years. I was like, are you kidding me? And I'd never done mountain biking. And so what I do now is I just add a layer of, you've got to have fitness. Your body's eventually going to decay, but you want to keep it with you as long as possible. And then also my dad, who was a Green Beret, he was a bull of a man. He got cancer in 2006 and he died in 2008. And it was 3 brutal years and slowly watching him decay. And he was very tough. So it took him a long time to go. And so the first part was just with Tim and Pat and committing to sort of do the exercise and build it around an adventure. Because frankly, I'm still not a gym rat. I don't love going to the gym, but if I know I'm going on a hike, like now we're all going to Japan and we're going to go on this overnight hike or jog or something. So I got to get in shape for that. So I always put something I'm very excited about and line it up with in the future so that I'm motivated to get in shape. Then secondly, of course, you just add in all the personal trainers. So I have a personal trainer, and I'm off of it right now, but have them come on a regular basis to the house or go to meet them. Because then when it's booked, it's really hard to duck it. And then do a lot of fun activities. So we play ultimate frisbee. So I've integrated that. So that's another way to get exercise and have fun. And then ultimately then diet. So when my dad got cancer, I tried to get him to go on he was a meat and potatoes guy, kind of old school. I tried to get him flipping to vegetables and juicing. He didn't take any of it. None of it stuck with him. He ate meat and potatoes till the day he died. But for me, I learned a lot, read a lot about books. And to this day, I have a goal of reading a book on health every year. Younger Next Year was one of my favorite books. I'm reading right now The Plant Paradox. I read the China Study. So I've moved my diet towards more vegetarian, vegetable. Right now I'm doing the Reset program with your good friend, Brian.
Yeah, baby.
Going a little ketogenic. But I'm just really trying to pay attention to what I eat. I have a chef that comes to the house now. Again, going back to my theme of always delegating. So we have an organic vegetarian chef that makes us meals about once every other, about twice a month, probably. She makes 5 days worth of meals. It's like $500 for me, my wife, and my kid. Some days we hate it. We don't eat any of it. We'll try it. And other days we eat half of it. And other times we eat all of it. But the point is I'm trying to make it easy for me to live a healthy life. And I know it sounds like all this stuff costs money, but it's not as much as you think. I mean, we're basically getting 20 meals for $500. So that's $25 a meal. Okay. So you run that to going out once or twice.
Right.
It's expensive, but it's not ridiculously expensive. And if you got to start with the end in mind, the same reason I told that girl today, the lady, you need to have an assistance right away. I mean, you just got to try to integrate. I often think you'll build a level of wealth to what the expectations are you set for your life. So by having the bookkeeper, by having the maid, by having the mechanic, not having to deal with this stuff, you're actually telling yourself, I'm gonna position myself where I need quite a lot of money to support this life that I'm building. And if you deny yourself that and fix your own car even though you hate it, and clean your own house even though you hate it, and eat badly because you're too lazy, you don't want to hire a chef and you're too lazy to cook healthy, all of that also leads to a destination. So I sometimes think you have to stretch ahead of your capacity to live a certain way so that your life is forced to catch up with that capacity versus waiting until you have the capacity to do the things that'll take you to the next level.
Dude, that's so good. So as we kind of come into the tail end, if you guys got any last questions, I would be sure to put those in the feed. But in line with bucket list adventures, this is something that you have, introduced me to in a lot of different spaces. And we've, Oktoberfest, backcountry of Austria, hiked Machu Picchu, Peru, Vietnam. We've done all kinds of insane stuff. We were just in Steamboat together. And, I know that the recharge is just as important as the charge, right? So Daniel asked, what are 3 of the top things on your bucket list, and which things are you planning on crossing off in 2018?
Wow, that's a great question. So I'm going to do an epic international trip with GoBundance to Japan in 2018, and I'm super excited about that. I am taking and this is probably a lifetime bucket list. I'm taking my entire family with FamBundance to go see the Northern Lights, and that'll be in either Finland or Iceland. And I'm really stoked about that. My entire life, I wanted to see the Northern Lights. We're actually renting igloos that have glass ceilings where we can look up at the lights from underneath. And then the idea of giving away 100 million is a new one that's probably right at the top of my bucket list. There's always the seeing your kids get married and have kids, being a granddad, all of that. So that's probably where I'm constantly trying to think of what could plus life. I'm rolling out my second book this year with Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning Millionaire. It should be finished in the not too distant future. My first book took 7 years. This one's only taken like 6 months, but I'm way smarter about how to write books now than I was 7 years ago. I think I've hit a lot of goals. So I'm constantly just thinking of how can I stretch it and take it to the next level. And the stretching and thinking is super fun as well. But it's hard when you've done so much to keep finding things to plus it. One of my big ones I've never done is swim with the sharks. I don't want to do it in South Africa where the water's cold. I want to do it in somewhere in the Caribbean where it's warm. So that one's definitely on there. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to do. I have a list somewhere of a bunch of them, and I got my goals with me as usual right here. So I always carry these everywhere I go, so people know I'm not a fraud. I'm literally like, this is my flight plan for the year. I'm super inspired to get most of it done. And yeah, there's yours, man, in that beautiful
You are the one who
beautiful
inspired me to create this, brother. This was the first time I saw your goals, and I left your house in Steamboat. I went, it's time to model and get after it.
Yeah.
And so
I
as
love that journal you created.
one of the things that I want to make sure one last person touched on this, and we'll wrap up with a final wealth building question. But you're an amazing father, and you are a committed husband to Tracy. And with everything that you got going on, how do you continue to put your family at the forefront of everything that you do? That's one thing that I really admire about you, with all the stuff you got going on, the inclusiveness that you have with your family and that lifestyle. I think is something that's important to highlight, because a lot of people are very, very wealthy and they have shitty relationships with their kids. They have a very poor or broken relationship or non-existent relationship with their life partner. And that's something I know that you are continuously working at. So tell us a little bit more about that, whatever you feel like sharing.
Yeah. So obviously, because of learning about people like you described that have terrible relationships, or the guy that's on his 8th wife, or with his four kids that he never sees, like, I believe we have to be perpetual students. And so not wanting to create that, I've put a lot of effort into being a better husband and being a great dad. And I can tell you it's not easy. It's easier because I'm older and I have more money. For sure, it makes it easier, which is another good reason to make a bunch of money. But with my wife, what I've learned is everything that works in business doesn't work with my wife. So I can say to my wife, hey, get your backpack. We're going to go climb that mountain. We'll be finished by tomorrow morning. And she'll just walk off in the opposite direction, right? There's no take charge with a wife. You have to be nurturing, listen, and see what you can do to support, right? So I read the books. I read a book on relationship every year. We read a book together. We do a seminar together every year. And we just try to co-facilitate our lives as equals. And we're very accepting of one another. And it's been tough, man. And we've been together now 15 years. We've been married for several years, 5 or 4 or something like that. But we have an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's tough, but it's very, very important. I don't believe in breaking things. I believe in building things. So I want my kids to grow up in a complete house. I want to have a great relationship with my wife. And I tell her all the time, like, my goal with you is to have the best relationship we could possibly have together. So whatever it takes to get there, is what I'm willing to do. And what I've learned is that is usually just spelt time. So time for me means taking a day off in the week, and just my wife and I have a Monday afternoon play date where we just go do whatever we want. And we don't always make it, but we've been doing a lot better recently. So right now we're really, really in a good space. With my kids, I notice if I go away on a 10-day business trip and I come back to my 1.5-year-old, he acts like I'm a stranger. Like, he doesn't even, he's warmish, but he's not like he was. And if I play with him every day, like I have been right now, sometimes he'll be in his mom's arms and go, "Oh, no, I want daddy." Right. Like, which is like, oh, he wants me more than you. Which is almost never, right? So that's a sign of me doing the right things. And with my daughter, I try to put her to bed every night. I try to get up and wake her up and have breakfast with her. I may be up an hour before her working, and I may be up an hour or 2 after her. Although as I get older, I'm falling asleep earlier, I've noticed. But I'll read with her. She loves to read. She's a bookworm. I love to read. So we just lay beside each other reading, and turn off the light. And she's reached a sweet age now where she'll converse with me. And sometimes the light goes off and she'll tell me some weird stuff about her day, which you can't make her do that. But when she does it, it's like a gift. And, and then when I have a 5-day business trip, I notice a little difference with her too. She's like, "Whatever, Dad, you're not around." So I just try to pay attention to the signs around me and really be tuned into my family. What's the point of having $1 bazillion if you're not a great dad and your kids can't stand you? So I'm sure I'm making a bunch of mistakes, but I'm just working hard to do the best I can. Like anyone else, I lose my patience. I say things I regret to both my wife and my kids, especially my wife. But I try to circle back. I've tried to learn to say I'm sorry. I try to own up to the stuff I'm doing wrong, and then read books to help me, transform. And if I need a therapist or a family therapist, we get one. Not for my kids yet, thank goodness, but I'm sure that'll come. But just for my wife and I, occasionally we'll go see someone and get a little professional perspective. And I'm just working at it, man, like I would a business or anything else, but not with the same force, because you can't force relationship. You have to earn it.
Yeah. Dro, you are you're a constant steward, of everything that you talk and you preach, and you're always practicing it, brother. And it's inspiring, and that's why I'm really grateful to have you on today, because I remember the first time I walked into your house and I felt like I had a pretty good, reach to resources around me, and the transformation that has taken place in my life because of that first day that I was invited into a conversation like this. That's why I started this, is to give more people an opportunity to step into these conversations and to have the opportunity to have that same kind of transformation for themselves if they choose it. So you were the catalyst for me, and I know you're the catalyst for a lot of people. And I just want to say I love you, man, and appreciate you for, obviously all the wealth building and business advice, but just being a great role model for, humanity in general. And I know a lot of people can echo that. So if you guys enjoyed this interview, give it a like, a thumbs up, drop a comment in below, letting David know what your favorite quote was. I got a whole list of notes over here, and I'm going to put a link for Wealth Can't Wait. So if you guys want to check that out on Amazon and download the book or purchase the book, I mean, it is hands down one of the top wealth building New York Times bestseller books that you guys can get your hands on in regards to physical wealth building of assets, but also life wealth accumulation as well. So as our final parting piece of advice for any aspiring millionaire or individual who just wants to create more abundance and wealth in their world, what would you say to them?
Be purposeful, Matt. Maddie, that's what I think. It's about being purposeful. Know what you want, go after it. Even if what you want changes, that's fine. Be purposeful in your changes too, but have a direction you're taking your life every single day. If you don't have an agenda for your life, somebody else is going to give you one for theirs. So know what you want, know what you're going, know that you don't know everything, but you have at least made a choice which way you're going to go. And then change that as circumstance dictate, change that as you feel the need to, but each day just try to take at least one step towards your path, 2 steps towards your path. And if you stay on the path towards your outcome goals over the long term, you get everything you want. You can't fail.
We'll have all the links to Dro's information if you guys want to connect, follow him, check out what he's got going on next. And thank you for everybody tuning in today. We got a new millionaire guest each and every month where you get access to people like David, where you may not get it otherwise. So feel free to check out millionairementorsmastermind.com for more information on how you can get that, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Dro, appreciate you, man.
Love you, Maddie. Take it easy, brother.